Another episode of True Wrestling Fans. I'm your host, Mike.
And I'm Frank.
Today, we're going to get into Demolition, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, if not the greatest tag team in WWE history.
Let's just say the greatest,
Yeah,
and my personal favorite,
yeah,
of all time.
They're certainly up there. We're just gonna get into their career. So let's go. I'm gonna start it off. I'm gonna get into basically Demolition. They started off with Axe. Axe was already there. Bill Eadie. And they had one of the Moondogs do the other character, Smash. Now, the problem with that was that people recognized him in the crowd, and they went to they did a couple house shows. People recognized them in the crowd, and they were chanting Moondog, Moondog, Moondog.
So, well, they had just, at that point, I think they had just left WWE because the Moondogs were former tag team champions, early upper 80s. 86, I think, was their last year. Right. So yeah, the local fans knew him because they were always on the house shows.
Right, and Bill Eadie was the masked superstar, so they didn't know who he was. So that ends up happening. They get the idea like, oh, this is not going to really work. The sad thing about it is apparently it was one of the Moondogs. It was his idea. The whole thing, the whole Demolition idea was his idea. So think about that. This
we
team,
can thank him for that.
Yeah, this team takes off, one of the greatest in the history of wrestling, and he came up with the idea, and he has nothing to do with it. But eventually,
well, he goes down as he can take the credit, and we'll give him the credit for the best tag team idea ever.
Yeah,
even if he wasn't involved in it.
Yeah. So eventually, they bring in Smash, the real Smash. Who was the Crusher. Who was he? Crusher or Khrushchev? Right, that was his name. He was doing the Russian gimmick down south.
Mm-hmm.
They brought him in. He was a power lifter too, and he was also one of the famous Minnesota guys, along with Perfect. Rude, obviously.
Lesnar, Shelton.
Well, they were much later. I'm talking about the original the original crew, which was the Road Warriors.
Yes.
I think I'm missing one other guy was from Minnesota. Who was this guy's partner? One of the Russian guys down in NWA.
You talking about Koloff?
Nikita. I believe Nikita was
Nikita Koloff.
I believe Nikita was also from Minnesota, and
the younger relative of Ivan.
Yeah, and most of them worked at the same bar at that famous bar, Grandma B's, I think it was. That they were all bouncers and that. So it's just a little side note that all these guys came from that venue, and then they end up later on feuding with the Legion of Doom, aka the Road Warriors. Later we'll get into all of that. So he replaces them and then takes off from there. So if you want to handle their early matches.
Yeah, they Axe and Smash, the real Axe and Smash, debuted January 26, 1987. Their first feud was two guys that were put together. It wasn't really a tag team, but they wanted to see what they could do with them. Ken Patera and Billy Jack Haynes. And that's really no throwaway match. Ken Patera was a successful wrestler, former Intercontinental Champion. Billy Jack Haynes had the look, in the short time he was there. So they feuded with them, took a few wins against them. They were mid-card tag team to start. They had feuds with the Killer Bees, the Rougeau brothers, the British Bulldogs was their most famous feud before they got into the tag team championship run, and especially Paul Romer and Jim Powers, the Young Stallions, to me reminded me of a similar rocker group because they had the same flamboyancy. But Demolition had feuds with all of them, including, matter of fact, the Can-Am Connection and the Islanders as well. Because remember, the Islanders, before they had turned heel, were fan favorites for that minute. But Demolition had good feuds with all of them. Won most of their matches. They weren't undefeated, but they won more than they lost, which is good because they were trying to boast them up.
Yeah, they were really pushing them.
Yeah, their biggest claim to fame, we all know, WrestleMania 4. They go to Atlantic City, take on Strikeforce, and win the tag titles.
But when did they debuted the prior Survivor Series, right? That was their pay-per-view debut. They were in the Survivor Series in '87.
I believe so. And if we're wrong, please somebody tell us.
They were in that Survivor Series, yeah. I believe that was their big.
I know they were involved in the Royal Rumble, and actually from the beginning of '88 on, they were involved in everything. But in '87, it was kind of on again, off again with them, mostly house shows.
Yeah.
But their biggest claim to fame, because their popularity was growing, despite the fact that they were heels managed by Mr. Fuji, They win the tag team championships against Strikeforce at WrestleMania 4. By that point, they had entered into feuds that year, again with the British Bulldogs for the tag team titles, which they had some of the greatest matches with them, as well as the Hart Foundation.
You know,
Now,
just for a second with WrestleMania, you know that when they hit, I think it was Axe that hit Rick Martel with the cane.
Mm-hmm.
He legitimately hit him.
Oh yeah,
he legitimately hit him hard, and the cane was supposed to break, but apparently Fuji grabbed the wrong cane or didn't care, and it wasn't gimmicked. And
that was actually one of the things that started Martel's leave of absence.
Yeah, well, they used
it between that and then the house show injury.
Yeah, but
alleged house show injury.
He hit him pretty. He hit him pretty bad. And I was a fan of Strikeforce. I like Strikeforce.
Yes.
But in Demolition, I was angry, but then at the same time, I was like, oh, these guys are kind of cool at the same time.
I didn't care. I was always for the babyface wrestlers back then. Kind of still partial to them now, but Demolition, I didn't care. The first time I watched them, I fell in love with them. I was like, this team is legit. They're my all-time favorite. Yeah, they look like Kiss, but they're badass Kiss. I don't care. They had the look, they had the style, they had the entrance theme. I mean, what wasn't there that you didn't love about this team? And the fans just eventually, when they turned fan favorite, the fans just fell in love with them almost instantly.
Yeah,
it wasn't like we talked about in the WrestleMania 5 review, the Hart Foundation, where the fans had to warm up to them. The fans just clicked instantly with Demolition.
Absolutely.
And matter of fact, there was a tag team that came in mid 1988 that I wouldn't say duplicated them, but they were kind of the badass tag team as well. And they were fan favorites at the time, the Powers of Pain. We talked about them in the 5 review. And it was at the end of 88, Demolition was still the tag team champions, that they started the feud with Powers of Pain. If you remember the big 10 man tag team Survivor Series match, 5 tag teams on each side. Demolition captained their team, Powers of Pain captained theirs. And it was during the match towards the end that, if you remember, Mr. Fuji held the rope down where Smash fell over and got counted out.
Yeah.
And this is where the turn came, where he left Demolition and the Powers of Pain came over and picked him up, wiped him off. And now all of a sudden the fans are like, wait a minute. 2 seconds ago, we were just cheering for you. You're telling me now we got to boo you?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a changing of the guard to where Demolition became the babyface, Powers of Pain became the heel, and Fuji was managing them. And I think, as far as the Powers of Pain go, that was the bad move, because as we talked about, it was just downhill from there, because Demolition just dominated that rivalry.
Yeah, okay, so this is what was pretty much going on. Demolition was getting cheered, and the fans liked them, even though they were heels.
Yeah.
And so they get nervous. The people in WWE, they're like, well, these guys are heels. They're getting cheered. We just got to turn them babyface, which I felt was a huge mistake. I think they should have left them as heels, at least for a little bit longer. Let that Powers of Pain feud play itself out. When you did that switch, I remember watching that as a kid. I remember this vividly. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I
couldn't believe, like, they just, like I said, the changing of the guard just
it didn't feel natural. And I felt like it was stupid. I loved Fuji with Demolition. It just worked.
Yeah.
It
did. It definitely did.
It worked. And so they switched them, and now Powers of Pain are bad. So I'm like, okay, now I'm supposed to boo Powers of Pain. I was
just cheering them a second ago.
I was just cheering them, and I still I like Demolition either way. I still like the gimmick. It felt forced, it felt rushed, and then we spoke about the WrestleMania 5. The blow off was lackluster.
Yeah, especially putting Fuji into the match where Fuji gets the pin. The Powers of Pain save face, but still the damage has been done because you've been losing left and right for months.
Yeah,
in tag team title matches against them.
And it's what the sad thing is, and we'll get into this later on. It's almost like what repeated itself. Instead, it was Demolition getting screwed over and buried, and the Road Warriors, aka Legion of Doom, basically did what they did.
I'm definitely going to get into that in a minute, because that I thought the timing was completely off.
Yeah. So
on that, but yeah, I will. I'm going to get into that, because that, as a Demolition fan, that really hurt. You were, and I'm sure everybody remembers this if you watched it, the 1989 Royal Rumble. Number 1 entrant, Axe. Number 2 entrant,
Yeah.
Smash. So rather than just stick around and wait for number 3, these guys, they reminded me, let me know if you agree. They reminded me of the Acolytes. Reminded me of Demolition. 2 guys that just we'll beat the hell out of each other for 2 minutes, and then we'll be teammates again in the next minute.
Yeah.
The Acolytes reminded me a lot of them because they were the same way, Bradshaw and Farouk. And Demolition was just like, all right, we're going to beat the holy hell out of each other. I'm not going to try to eliminate you. And as soon as the countdown clock came out for number 3, they dusted each other off. All right, let's beat up this dude.
Let's go again.
Unfortunately, number 3 was Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
And to me, that started the feud that culminated at WrestleMania 6. And they were just pounding Andre down, and Andre was just brushing them off. And it was good to see how they could just beat the crap out of each other. And then, all right, we're done. Let's go. We're back to being as a tag team. And everybody got a kick out of the fact that, wow, Axe and Smash are beating each other up.
Right,
What is this?
They actually went at it, yeah.
Yeah, like some people were like, wait a minute, is my favorite tag team breaking up? But no, that wasn't the case, everybody. They were still together. And one thing that they had going for them, and it was a shame that this was broken, and I'm sure you'll elaborate on this later on. They held the longest reign as tag team champions, 478 days as World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions until 5 years ago when New Day, Kofi Kingston, Big E, and Xavier Woods broke the record. And I'm not taking anything away from New Day. They are a great tag team, still to this day, even minus Big E. It hurt being a fan of Demolition and what they accomplished back then, that the record was tarnished and just wiped off the face of the earth. And again,
that's political. That was a political.
I'm sure you'll get into it here momentarily. But for every championship you win, obviously you have to lose it. And one thing Demolition was known for was they didn't lose the titles on pay-per-views. Yeah. They lost them on Saturday Night Main Event, Superstars of Wrestling. I got to see my favorite tag team lose the titles every time out on live TV, rather than, because not everybody could watch the pay-per-views back then. And if I did happen to miss it, and then I find out, oh wait, they're not the tag champions, what's going on? They lose the tag titles to the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. Saturday Night's Main Event, July 29th, 1989, which was actually a pretty good match.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. The Brainbusters, they were very good wrestlers, even though they only were there for a year.
Horsemen, yeah, unfortunately, because as soon as Tully Blanchard left, right before Survivor Series '89, Arn was right out the door.
Was right out the door. That was the end.
And I don't know. I don't think they were ever going to stay long. I think for whatever reason, when we eventually get to the Brainbusters, for whatever reason they left NWA at the time. Honestly, I think their contract was only a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
For whatever it was. But in the time that the Brainbusters were there, they made the Rockers a better tag team because they worked with them and they matured them, as Arn Anderson had said, and even Shawn Michaels agreed to it. And they had a great chemistry and great match with Demolition. Mm-hmm. The only thing I didn't like, though, was Brainbusters had won the titles July '89. SummerSlam was right around the corner. Why didn't they defend the tag team titles at SummerSlam? Because they had the match with the R Foundation, and I thought even if the Brainbusters came out on top in the tag team match or whatever, count out or DQ or whatever, I think defending them against the Hart Foundation would have been pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
But in SummerSlam '89, you remember Demolition had there was like 2,000 pounds in this ring. Demolition and Hacksaw Jim Duggan against the Twin Towers and Andre the Giant. Yeah, I mean this is one of the greatest 6-man tags I've ever seen.
It was, but I didn't understand why they didn't have I was gonna say natural disasters. The Twin Towers. Why didn't they have the Twin Towers just in a straight up match against them, 2-on-2?
Because at the time besides the Brainbusters, they were feuding with the Twin Towers.
Yeah, I don't know. I was never really a big fan. They pulled it off, but I was never a big fan of when you have a high caliber team. Mm-hmm. I would rather see a tag team versus
straight up match rather than a 6-man.
But it was fine.
I mean, for the second annual SummerSlam, it was pretty decent because remember that was the second of 6-man, 2 6-man tag team matches they had. Which I always thought that Santana and Martel in the second one should have been a straight up match, considering what happened at WrestleMania 5.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll get into that later on. However, and the reason why going back to the Brainbusters winning the tag team titles, Who helped them win it? None other than Andre.
Yeah.
So there's another reason why they probably added him to the feud as well,
Mm.
to the match at SummerSlam, because
Right.
Andre, this was a year and a half rivalry with Andre. Even though Andre had the feud with Jake the Snake, he was still feuding with Demolition.
Yeah.
So we go to November 4th, 1989, where they regain the tag team titles from the Brainbusters, obviously probably because the Brainbusters are leaving. So now, one foot was already out the door.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have a two-time tag team champion, which was kind of rare for that time, because usually it was a one and done for most teams.
Yeah.
Maybe you had a guy like Tito Santana, who was a two-time tag champion, but with two different teams. They regained the titles from them, but a matter of 1 month later on Superstars, December 13th, 1989, they lose the tag team titles again. This time to a put-together team of the Colossal Connection.
Yes.
Andre the Giant,
Yep.
and Haku, which I thought the tag team worked, but now going back and even seeing the Andre documentary and reading up on it, putting him in a tag team was the right move, considering his health and his ability was declining tremendously.
They were protecting him, yeah.
And maybe he stayed a little bit too long. I know their goal eventually was, they wanted at WrestleMania 7, Andre and the Undertaker, but that was never going to happen. Not come 1990.
No, he
was
done.
Yeah, but Andre, at least they put a belt on him that DiBiase didn't buy. So he's the tag team champion with Haku. So they take it to WrestleMania 6. And the match, to me, was a little disappointing for one reason. It was pretty much a handicap match.
Yeah, it was Haku.
Because Andre never got in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, he interfered, but he never got tagged.
He was never tagged in.
He was never tagged in. He was never the legal man, yeah. And
that was a shame, because this is the guy they're feuded with from the Royal Rumble '89 up until now. This is the guy, and they never got there. I mean, they pounded down on him a little bit, but he was never tagged in. And Ventura had even said it that Haku's got to make the tag. He's been in there too long, and they do their finishing move on him, and now they've three-peated as tag team champions, which again unheard of.
That was huge, yeah.
And I was like the Sky Dome in Toronto. I was jumping. I watched this live, and I was ecstatic. Kind of like two guys that were in attendance that night. If the people don't know, Edge and Christian.
That's right, yeah.
12-year-olds were attending this at the Sky Dome,
and they were really over. The crowd went crazy. They were behind them. They were behind Demolition. Yeah,
absolutely.
They were behind Demolition.
This was everybody's favorite tag team. Pretty much the rivaling, I think, of the popularity would be the Hart Foundation at the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those are the two.
Now, this is where I get aggravated, because now the Hart Foundation deemed themselves number one contenders at SummerSlam '90, which is great, because now you have two babyface tag teams going to do battle. That wasn't the case, and they brought in Crush at the time, because you know this, Bill Eadie, aka Axe, had the shellfish allergy, because he makes the frequent trips to Japan, so they weren't guaranteed that his health was always going to be there.
They didn't know what was going on, because he had all these heart tests done. He had like a near-death experience. It was a big thing, and they didn't know if he was ever going to wrestle again.
Yeah. So to save the tag team, they brought in a third member, which they did the Freebird rule.
Right.
So, okay, you brought him in. The fans, the popularity's not declined yet, but the fans are they've turned, because I don't think Fuji wasn't their manager yet at SummerSlam. Not yet. No,
that's later. That's towards the end.
That was later.
Yeah, it was later, and it was already. Yeah.
So now we find out it's not Axe and Smash against the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam '90 in the 2 out of 3 falls match. It's Smash and Crush.
Yeah.
Which, okay, I've still got Demolition versus Hart Foundation, and I watched this one live as well, and I was excited because it was these two teams. What I did not like was, this is where the Legion of Doom, aka the Road Warriors, made their debut.
Well, remember,
at least the pay-per-view debut.
Remember, they turned them heel.
Yes, there was that made Demolition the official team.
They turned them heel, and the only reason they turned them heel was because the Legion of Doom, aka the Road Warriors, were coming in. So they turned them heel out of nowhere. Doesn't feel right. Then you
It
got
didn't.
then
It
you
was too
got
fast.
right. Then you got Crush in there.
Hmm.
So it's already a mess.
Yeah.
And you got the Legion of Doom on the way. So you're basically like starting to almost kill off Demolition. You're kind of sabotaging them. Then you go to SummerSlam, instead of them just having a straight up match, 2 out of 3 falls, which we were all looking forward to.
Oh yeah.
It was still a good match, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, it was. But the outcome was, there was a discrepancy with it to me because it wasn't legit. It wasn't a straight up. It was because of LOD's distraction
yeah,
that the Hart Foundation get the third fall and they win the WWE Tag Team Championships with taking nothing away from the Hart Foundation. You know, they were very well deserving as well as were a few teams back then. But the ending to me was controversial, and it shouldn't have went down that way. And that, like you said, that's where Demolition's heel turn came. And also their popularity declined tremendously because everybody was pro Legion of Doom when they came in. They were the new badasses. So now you've really taken away. They Demolition pretty much got the powers of pain experience.
that's exactly what they got. The problem was, for me, it's okay you're bringing in the Road Warriors, aka Legion of Doom. It's fine. But you should have kept those two teams apart.
Yes.
Because then everybody would have been clamoring for that match, which should have been
WrestleMania 7.
At WrestleMania 7. It should have been
I'll get to that when we do that review.
That showdown. So you bring them right together, and then I think they were even cutting promos, LOD. We're calling them rip-offs. I think they were rip-offs. Right?
Rip-offs, knockoffs.
Right, and that's what people have been...
At one point, Hawk said Kiss impersonators.
Yeah, I mean...
He actually went there.
You're just cutting their feet. After all it is... Everything they've done for the business, for the WWF, all the money they've generated, they were over. And you say, oh, well, I got Road Warriors now, so...
We don't need you.
We don't need you. Get lost. I felt that wasn't fair. And here's the thing, too. You know, back then there was no internet and stuff like that. Not everybody had, you know, I guess, was it on TBS? I guess WCW or NWA was on TBS at the time.
Yes.
Right. I don't think cable was as mainstream as it eventually becomes. People still had cable, but like, for example, you know, me, I used to watch WWF religious. I was a WWF guy. I knew a little bit because I used to read the magazines.
Yeah.
But to me, Demolition was Demolition.
Had the hotline too.
Yeah. The diehard WWF people, they didn't even know about the Road Warriors. Really, they probably saw pictures of them, but they didn't really, unless you were watching both brands. And WWF was still bigger on a national level than NWA. So it's not fair to say that they're ripoffs. And here's my distinction between the two. Demolition could wrestle. Those guys could work. All right.
Yes.
And I love Legion of Doom, and they're one of my favorite teams, and they were exciting, but they weren't wrestlers. They were just brawlers. They were brawlers. They were big guys. They had a great look. Mm-hmm. Demolition, they brawled, but they could actually wrestle too. I don't think it's fair that people knock them and say, "Oh, they were just rip off of them because of the way they look, the face paint." I'm not one of those guys that thinks that.
No, absolutely not. And I'll be honest with you, as a kid back then, I was like you, diehard WWE. Every show that was on, I watched it. I really didn't know about WCW/NWA as a kid until I believe it was 1992. When I flipped over to TBS and I happened to see Paulie Dangerously, aka Paul Heyman at the time, wrestling on Clash of the Champions, and that's when later on I went back and I was able to watch all that stuff, and I became a fan of it.
Yeah,
because in that early time of WCW, it was good, and that's where I saw where the Road Warriors had originated from. But like you said, bringing them in at this time, the WWE just slapped your 3-time tag team champions right in the face. And it only got worse from there.
No, it did. Then they started throwing them, besides the Survivor Series, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
They started throwing them in these 6-man tags with the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Ultimate Warrior and Legion of Doom versus Axe, Smash, and Crush. And Warrior.
And that's not fair, to be honest.
No,
because you got the WWE champion in there against the tag team. Like, come on.
And not only that, you got Legion of Doom, who was just destroying people.
Yeah, so they make Demolition look like nothing.
Like they were bums.
They shouldn't, these guys were tag champions? Really?
Yeah. No. I'll say this, Survivor Series 1990, that's probably my favorite Survivor Series, I think. It's probably my favorite Survivor Series.
Minus the gobbledygooker.
Yeah, minus the gobbledygooker.
I like the grand finale thing they did at the end.
That's why I liked it. It was really cool.
I really thought, now we've discussed this before. Yeah. I'm a stickler for Survivor Series matches. I love them. The 4-on-4, 5-on-5.
The original 4-on-4, 5-on-5, yeah.
I love it. the grand finale, I actually was impressed with it that year, and I wish they would have extended it after that, but they didn't. Other than gobbledygooker, which oh my god, which I remember the Undertaker thought he was going to be that when he was debuting at that pay-per-view. And he's like, please God, I don't want to be Eggman.
The egg. But the opening match, which was
Warrior, Tornado, Legion of Doom against Mr. Perfect and Legion of Doom.
You know, for those that don't know, that was actually all the Warriors. I don't know if they did that on purpose, but when you think about it, Kerry Von Erich, they called him what was his name? He was something warrior down in Texas.
Yes.
He was
for all the fans of the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds, y'all will know this.
Yeah, I think he was the modern day warrior.
Modern day warrior.
Kerry Von Erich.
Yes.
The Ultimate Warrior and the Road Warriors.
Road Warriors.
Even though they were called the lead, but little side note.
Well, I always thought that the Road Warriors, that was their name in WCW, and that they were the Legion of Doom here. That's actually not the case.
No.
Because not too long ago, I was watching the WCW pay-per-view in 1989, and they called them the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors.
Well,
they were using both names.
No, but the faction was the Road Warriors. When you incorporated their manager,
Paul
Ellering, and they actually had another member, I forgot who it was. That was part of their group, not the tag team, but their stable.
But even in WWE,
the Legion of Doom, and they called them Road Warrior Hawk and Road Warrior Animal in WWF. So it wasn't a thing about contracts. It wasn't about the names.
No, it was just they used both names.
But Vince felt like we got too many warriors. We got the Ultimate Warrior. We don't.
And I love that they used the name Legion of Doom.
Yeah,
I thought it was badass.
It was cool because the superheroes, the Super Friends.
Yeah, exactly.
The villains, but yeah, so. That was against Mr. Perfect and Axe Smash and Crush. And that was great. That was a great that assembly of talent.
It was,
but
you saw what Axe looked like when they're going to the ring. Now he's got the slick back hair.
Yeah.
And I mean, even his face makeup looked blah. It just looked like, okay, I'm out here, but I can't. It didn't almost look like he was medically cleared to compete.
Yeah,
because shortly after the match started, he was the first one gone.
Yeah, they were still worried. They were still worried.
I believe before Rick Rude left, I really believe that he would have been part of that match. Because Rick Rude had left a month prior, his contract was up, and if he would have stayed, I think this would have been the match he would have been added in, and it would have just been perfect Rude and Demolition.
That would have made sense. I mean, that would have made sense to have him in there. Yeah.
But he left. I think his last house show obligation was in October. Before Survivor Series, and then he was gone.
Right.
So Axe is the first one gone, and then Demolition and the Road Warriors get disqualified because and now we're down to Perfect and versus Tornado and Warrior. Tornado gets eliminated. Perfect gets eliminated by Warrior, and the rest is history. Warrior goes on to the grand finale.
Yeah. So that is the beginning. It's the beginning of the end for Demolition right there.
Well, the next chapter in the beginning of the end, because to me it was at SummerSlam. Now the whole kayfabe news with the reason why Axe is gone, because of a whole bunch of run-ins that had happened after Survivor Series, the Demolition did with Orient Express and the Legion of Doom, and I can never understand the Orient Express because they were all managed by Mr. Fuji.
Yeah.
The Freebird rule that they were that had adapted, and for anybody that doesn't know, the Fabulous Freebirds was started out originally as 2 members, and then eventually went to 3, and which means any 2 members of the 3 could defend the tag team titles or be in a match. So that's what Demolition had. Jack Tunney, the president at the time, or at least on TV, had said that they could no longer be. He abolished the Freebird rule, and Axe had to go. So now it's strictly Smash and Crush as Demolition. But by this point, it's like the fans they're not even booing them.
No, and they had Bro Fuji back.
Yeah.
I think right before.
They tried to salvage it, but it was already done.
But they were just basically trying to kill them off. And I've seen shoot interviews with Barry Darsow, Smash, and Bill Eadie, Axe, and he said that basically they were trying to kill them off. They were just trying to kill off Demolition, and just they felt like their time was done. They had the Legion of Doom, and they did everything in their power basically to just kill them off.
And it's a shame because when I get into the WrestleMania 7 review, I'll reiterate on this again. Legion of Doom versus, even if it was Smash and Crush Demolition, if they didn't do the process of burying them through the last part of 1990, because by 1991 they really weren't relevant anymore.
No,
I mean, look at the match look at the match they had at WrestleMania 7 against Tenryu and Katawa. Two guys that weren't even in the WWE until WrestleMania 7, who nobody even heard of. Nobody even cared about this match. And Demolition loses to them.
And then were they wearing the masks yet? Because I remember they had them putting on the masks during the matches at some point, or maybe that was right after that. And
I think that was after on the house shows, but they were still doing the old Demolition thing. But even their theme had changed.
Yes, they changed.
It wasn't their famous theme that here comes the axe, here comes the smasher. It was just some generic thing they threw together.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, they had done an interview prior to the match, and by the time they got back in, Demolition was already in the ring. So it's one of those, let's just hurry up and get this over with. Let's just
hurry up. And you talk, what a fall from grace. I mean.
Oh, my God, from a year ago. A year ago, you're three-peating tag champions to a mid-card, barely a 5-minute match loss. And to be honest, by that point, I don't even remember the last victory they had.
I don't know. I actually don't remember anything from 91
with Demolition,
other than that WrestleMania match.
They had a few house shows against the Legion of Doom leading up into to the mid 90s, but otherwise they were the first card on the house show, and it was always a loss.
Yeah.
And by that point, I mean, the Smash and Crush shortly after WrestleMania, after those house shows, they broke up, and Smash continued to do the Demolition, the Demolition Smash gimmick for a while till they re-gimmicked him as the Repo Man. If you want to take why Crush left.
Well, I'm gonna get into Crush in a second, but what happened with Bill Eadie, Axe, was the whole health thing. They didn't want him to wrestle. But he said, "Oh, we'll give you an office job. Don't worry." They promised him whatever they promised him in terms of money and in terms of the position he was going to have. By the time it came down to actually sign the contract, it wasn't anything close to what they had negotiated initially, what they had promised him. So he just left. He said, "I'm out of here." He didn't even work backstage. I think he went over back to Japan. You know, so that was the end of him. What happens with Crush later on is that he gets caught at the border. Apparently, he had his own personal steroids. He gets jammed up at the border, gets arrested, and they told him, "Okay, you got to go away. We got to send you away for a little while."
They technically didn't fire him. He took a leave of. They called it a leave of absence.
Yeah.
And in that time, what they did was they re-gimmicked him into what everybody saw later on as Kona Crush
from Hawaii.
Yeah, which I kind of liked it.
I like Crush. He was a good worker too. He was very agile. I don't know what happened that he started working as more of just a powerhouse brawler. Because for his size, he was actually very agile.
Mm-hmm.
He can move. You know.
I mean, do I agree with the certain matches they gave him, like Doink? No. I like that it benefited him at WrestleMania 10 when he fought Randy Savage in the Falls Count Anywhere match when he went back to turning heel. It didn't benefit Randy Savage, however, because, I mean, at that point, he was just scratching and crawling, looking for something to do because, remember, Vince McMahon had the transition, didn't want him wrestling. They wanted him in the announce booth, which I love Randy Savage, but as an announcer, he sucked.
He was terrible. Yeah.
So I rathered him in the ring, and I don't really see why it wouldn't have benefited the younger talent for him to be in the ring. Remember, he wanted to do that whole thing. He wanted to face Shawn Michaels at that WrestleMania. You know, he wanted a year-long feud to lead up to that, and he didn't get it. So Crush comes back as the babyface. Smash gets re-gimmicked as the Repo Man.
The Repo Man, yeah.
Which his only big feud, if you want to call it that, was besides Big Boss Man for a minute, was Randy Savage.
Yeah.
When he stole Randy Savage's hat.
He stole his hat, yeah. And so they basically wasted.
Yeah, it was. Because remember when in the 93 Rumble, Repo Man kept looking back to see, and Savage came in the Rumble, and he just took off for the ring room, and Repo's trying to run. I mean, what was funny, though, at SummerSlam 92, you get Repo Man versus Crush. So you get Smash versus Crush. You get in the Demolition split up match. But maybe at that time, I think some fans didn't realize that at first that was Barry
Right.
Darsow.
That it was Barry Darsow.
Smash.
Yeah.
And that feud was just pretty much that pay-per-view. And at that point, then Repo Man took off. He went to WCW. Was the Blacktop Bully.
Yeah.
Which didn't take off.
No,
He feuded with Dustin Rhodes. King of the Road match was one of the worst when they're fighting in the back of a trailer.
Oh, gee, I forgot about that match.
That's just the type of things that WCW did.
Yeah, it's rough.
Crush stuck around when he had an Intercontinental title match against Shawn Michaels in 1993. I believe it was King of the Ring. Then after that, they had the whole thing where he turned on Savage. Then all that brief storyline, he went back to Fuji, was teaming with Yokozuna, then leaves for a little while, comes back as this former prisoner inmate in the Nation of Domination. Crush, got the tattoo on his head. That doesn't work out, so the Nation goes in a different direction. Now he's running the Disciples of Apocalypse. Oh my God. And then that doesn't work out, and he goes to WCW. First is Bryan Adams. That doesn't work out, so now we're in a tag team with Brian Clark, Chronic, which I liked.
They actually weren't bad.
No.
Yeah.
The theme was it was techno.
Yeah.
It was good. I liked the outfits that they had. They couldn't do any worse than their previous gimmicks in WCW. And they were tag team champions. As a matter of fact, Bryan Adams returned during the Invasion in his one and only pay-per-view in a tag team title match versus Undertaker and King.
Yeah, they did nothing with him. So, but
I don't think Vince McMahon was ever going to do anything with him again, even when he came back in the WCW thing, because he was gone shortly after that.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen anybody moved out that fast since Buff Bagwell came into WWE.
Seriously.
And if nobody knows that story real quick, it was because of his mom calling up saying that he couldn't work the hellacious schedule he had. And Vince said, no problem. He doesn't have to work here at all. And Monday Night Raw, Austin throws him out the door.
And that's it.
But that's the story of Demolition, their claim to fame, and then their just utter demise. And it really broke my heart because, like I said, they are my favorite tag team of all time. I have others on my list, but they top my list. And it just wasn't right that what was done with them. And a matter of fact, I think up until about 5 years ago in the independent circle, they had just finally stopped wrestling. They were wrestling together. They were reunited in 2010, and they did some independent stuff. And up until about 5 years ago, they stopped. They're still doing autograph sessions. I've seen photos of them. They still look pretty good, even with the makeup on. But it just hurt to see what they did to them.
To see at the end
of months.
Yeah, how they completely ruined. They deserve better than that. If they were trying to get rid of them, they should give them like a good send off. For them to just go out the way they did was ridiculous. It was unbelievable looking back at it. And now they're not even in the Hall of Fame. That's political. That's because of the lawsuit that they have against the WWE.
I don't think they'll ever be in, to be honest.
So I don't know if they're ever going to get in, but they deserve it. They should be there. And I felt like that was a shame that they had New Day break their record, and they only had New Day break their record just so Demolition wouldn't have the record anymore. That was
they wouldn't be acknowledged.
They wouldn't be acknowledged because if you think about it, they're for a tag team as impactful as they were, and widely considered the best tag team in WWE history. They don't even speak about them. They hardly even mention them.
And look how long it took before a team even won the tag team titles 3 times.
Yeah.
It was about 4 or 5 years before that even happened. And again, back then, they
won actually 1,000 times. The 1,000-time champion Outlaws, but whatever. Yeah, but
I even think it was before that. I think it was the Smoking Guns.
I think it was the Guns. Yeah, it was the Guns.
I know Money Incorporated was a 2-time tag team champion, but it's ridiculous that they did this and they didn't get the WrestleMania match with LA. Even if they came on the losing end against Legion of Doom at WrestleMania 7, at least everybody gets the respectful match we deserved with those 2 teams.
Absolutely.
But it is what it is, and again, Legion of Doom is definitely on my favorite list of all time. I just don't agree with how they were utilized in the beginning with Demolition.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's our Demolition episode. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys go look up Demolition if you haven't heard from them. Go look up their matches and check them out because they're definitely one of the best that ever did it. Speaking of tag teams, our next episode is going to be the Hart Foundation, my personal favorite tag team and my personal favorite wrestler, Bret the Hitman Hart. So you guys,
I have nothing against him. Don't start bringing up Montreal
No,
again.
we're
Come
not gonna
on
get into
now.
Montreal. But I hope you guys enjoy. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.